And this is the last topic in this course, vendor management and contract management. And I don't underestimate the importance of these. Probably one of the most long-lasting decisions that you'll make in a cloud migration is choosing a vendor and ensuring that the vendor you choose meets the needs for the organization, and also managing contracts with that vendor moving forward. So these are really important topics. So vendor management talks about how we choose a vendor, how we audit that the vendor is capable or is doing what they're contracted to do, and generally how to look at selection of vendors and so forth. So, but like I said, probably one of the most important decisions that you'll make in moving to the cloud, besides the decision to go to the cloud, is what vendor you're going to choose. Or if you're already in the cloud, perhaps switching vendors or choosing which vendor for a certain aspect of the cloud. And for sure, one thing I always like to make absolutely sure with when I do consulting with the cloud is there's no reason to have just one vendor. Some people have this idea that they have to choose a single vendor to do all of their cloud services, and it's a utility. So in some cases, the storage might be better with one provider. Your database services might be better with another. And you might use yet other services with another cloud provider. So, for example, I have an infrastructure with a client that's using Amazon for their virtual machines. They're using Google for their object storage because Google had the most attractive SLAs with the best rate for them for their particular needs. They had a good offering for them for the object storage, and but Amazon had better infrastructure for their virtual machines, and they wanted to use Microsoft SQL Server. And Microsoft just happens to have the best Microsoft SQL Server compatible cloud platform offering. There's other ones out there. Amazon and Google both have, to some extent, offerings like that, but it's Microsoft's product, so they have a really good offering for that. So they were able to diversify across all the different major cloud providers. So it's good to understand all these different vendors and be able to evaluate what vendor makes the best choice. And the thing is, you can't go to a board meeting, you can't go to management in a company and say, I think we should use Azure, and they say, okay, why? Well, because I like Microsoft, right? It's or because it's the cheapest, or what have you. You have to show that you did adequate research and that you understand all the risks and you understand their capabilities. So that's kind of one of the first things is understanding what your risk exposure is with various vendors, understanding their compliance or their level of compliance, and your within your framework of regulations and laws that you have to comply with. So when I choose a cloud vendor, one thing I have to look at is this cloud vendor able to comply with HIPAA, because I do a lot of healthcare work, and if the cloud vendor isn't aware of or has no framework to deal with HIPAA, then I can't use that cloud vendor. So I have to understand all that. Um, Common criteria assurance frameworks. So there's common frameworks for cloud service providers, which we can also look at cloud certification to meet that need. So there's various cloud certifications that you can look. Different cloud service providers will say that they have certain certifications. Some examples of those. There's the Certified Cloud Service, there's CSA attestation, CSA certification, CSA self-assessment. There's the EuroCloud self-assessment and audit certification. There's ISO, which has certifications. The payment card industry has certifications for cloud. LEET has a security rating guide that you can use for cloud, and then SOC also has auditing standards for cloud service providers that they can claim compliance with. So these are all things that you can look for when you're looking at cloud service providers. You can see what standards they comply with, and if you're not familiar with the standard, you can learn more about it to see. They might say we're certified this or that, and you can look at that and use that as part of your objective decision. And a lot of times what I'll do is take something that someone says they're certified for, look at those certification objectives, and since they're certified to those objectives, then I can say, here are the objectives that they meet, and I can use that in my presentation when I'm talking about why I'm selecting a certain provider, whether it's cloud or anything else. But that's certainly another way to do this. Once you select the cloud service provider, now you have to maintain contracts with those providers. So you have to understand the contractual requirements from the organization's baseline and checklist for the right to audit, understanding the gaps that allows the organization to challenge and request changes to the contract before signing an acceptance. Most of us in our personal lives are not used to that second step. You go to the car dealer to buy a car and they give you 1,000 contracts to sign. You're signing all this paperwork to buy a car. Even if you're paying cash, they still have all these contracts that you sign. Most people don't read them. Most people don't even look at them. They just sign it. They say, "What's this?" They say, "Oh, this is just a sign that that we're doing this or that, or that we're disposing of your old vehicle, whatever it is." Um, sometimes I try to read those contracts, especially because car dealers can be snakes, right? They're not well known for being forthcoming in a lot of things. Um, One of the things I negotiate for in those contracts is a lot of times they have clauses that where they basically say you can't sue them, or they say you have to go through binding arbitration rather than suing them if an issue arises. Well, good Lord, I'm not going to give the car dealer the right to use their own arbitrator if I should have any problem with the car that I'm buying. I mean, this is an expensive, it's probably the second most expensive thing that most of us purchase, maybe the third now with education being so expensive. But most of us in our lives, we buy a house, we get educated, we buy a car. Those are the big ticket items. And, if I'm signing that third largest ticket item, I want to make sure that I have a right to recourse if something goes wrong. So I'll go back and cross out in the contract the things that I don't agree with, and I'll jot in what my thoughts are. And what's supposed to happen is then somebody reviews it on the other side. They countersign or initial the changes, and then we both have an agreement in place. The last time I tried that at a car dealer, they said, "Well, we really can't sell the car if you don't agree to the contract." But I pushed them, and eventually they called me back and said, "Okay, we agreed to these terms." So you can do that. But when we as an organization are going to spend a lot of money with a cloud service provider, you can look at and review those contracts and ensure that they meet your needs. And I've even done this with the major cloud service providers like Google and so forth, where they've provided a contract and we strike out certain clauses and make some modifications and send it back, and then they either accept or they reject it with something that's a little bit different that their lawyers liked, and then we all sign it and we move on with our day. But so I guess the important thing here is this is not like signing something in your personal life where most people just sign whatever's put in front of them and call it a day. You have the right and you have the responsibility to review those things and make sure that the contract is going to meet your needs on your side. So the CCSP should have an idea of what she is working with and the kind of leverage that she can have during an audit. And by the way, CCSP here is the Certified Cloud Security Professional. So hopefully at the conclusion of this course, now that we're in 10 units into this course, hopefully you've learned enough information that you should be able to sit for a Certified Cloud Security Professional exam, which is administered by ISC Squared. I certainly recommend looking into that. Now that we're at the end of the course, I could mention that, that's something you can certainly look into. So these are some key components that you'll find in most contracts with cloud security providers. So these are some of the things that you would look for. I'm not going to go through this list. It's a pretty long list, but it's a good little checklist of different things that we've learned about in this course that you may find in a contract with a cloud service provider. And finally, supply chain management. So when we talk about the supply chain, basically the cloud service provider becomes a part of our supply chain. So when you think about a supply chain in a traditional sense, the supply chain, say for building a car, we'll go back to the car example. The supply chain to the car dealer is the car manufacturer, and their supply chain is the is the raw materials to make that car and all of the components that go into that car. When you think about a car, the car company doesn't just build a car, from raw materials. They're getting components that are made by other companies. For example, the radio in your car is made by one company. Components within the radio are made by other companies. So just that one example, if you look at a car stereo or a car radio, the electronics company that makes that radio is sourcing components that are coming from other electronics companies who are sourcing raw materials from other companies. The supply chain goes pretty deep. So one minor change in any of those in any area of the supply chain can have an effect on the supply of the vehicle to the dealer. So as a car dealer, I should probably be concerned if there's a shortage of raw materials like leather or rubber and things like that. Like the rubber market would have a significant impact on the cost of manufacturing the vehicle and shipping a vehicle and all of those things. So all of those things play into that supply chain. So you really want to have a good understanding of that supply chain for whatever business you're in. That applies, of course, to cloud and to IT service delivery. The cloud now becomes an important part of that supply chain for our delivery of services. So we really want to make sure that we understand the supply chain. We understand what these cloud service providers are providing to us and what's affected through the entire life cycle of that supply chain. And that concludes our course. So that is this is the final lecture video for this course. I hope you enjoyed the course, and good luck on the final exam.